The Caribbean has become the world's newest flashpoint as two nuclear-armed powers edge toward direct military confrontation. What started as a drug interdiction operation has exploded into the most dangerous military standoff in the Western Hemisphere since the Cuban Missile Crisis. 8 million Venezuelans are now armed and ready to fight American forces, while President Trump has deployed a massive naval armada just miles from Venezuela's coastline. This isn't just saber-rattling anymore. This is preparation for war. The escalation began innocuously enough. President Trump announced that the U.S. Navy struck a vessel in the southern Caribbean carrying what he described as a Venezuelan drug shipment. But what seemed like routine counter-narcotics enforcement has spiraled into something far more dangerous. Washington sent 3 warships and 4,000 Marines toward Venezuela, transforming the Caribbean into an armed camp where miscalculation could trigger a regional war. Nicolas Maduro's response has been swift and unprecedented. President Maduro has called for a people in arms, and an estimated 8 million Venezuelans have joined citizen militias. Across the country, young people, students, workers, and retirees are training in basic combat, emergency response, and civil defense. This isn't just military posturing. This is total mobilization for national defense on a scale not seen in Latin America since the Falklands War. The American military buildup tells the story of an administration preparing for far more than drug interdiction. The deployment includes 3 destroyers, at least 1 submarine, and an amphibious ready group filled with Marines. 8 U.S. Navy ships are now involved in counter-narcotics efforts in Latin America, creating the largest American naval presence in the Caribbean since the Cold War. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth personally visited the USS Iwo Jima, sending an unmistakable message about American military resolve. But here's what makes this crisis so explosive. Both sides are now operating under the assumption that the other intends regime change through military force. Maduro denounced the U.S. military deployment in Caribbean waters as an immoral, criminal, and illegal plan against his country, seeking regime change. Meanwhile, Trump is reportedly weighing strikes targeting cartels inside Venezuela as part of a wider pressure campaign on Maduro. When both sides believe the other is planning their destruction, miscalculation becomes almost inevitable. The Venezuelan military response has been equally dramatic. Maduro sent 25,000 troops to Venezuela's borders, while mobilizing troops along the coast and border with Colombia. This isn't defensive positioning. This is preparation for asymmetric warfare against a superior military force. Venezuelan doctrine calls for drawing any American invasion into costly urban warfare while unleashing millions of armed civilians against occupying forces. The timing of this confrontation reveals deeper strategic calculations on both sides. Trump's "we will show no mercy" to the cartel's campaign promise has evolved into something far more ambitious than anyone anticipated. The Trump administration has accused Maduro of engaging in drug trafficking, going so far as to announce a $50 million bounty for information leading to his arrest and conviction. This bounty essentially makes Maduro a hunted man, leaving him little choice but to prepare for the worst. What makes this crisis particularly dangerous is that both leaders have painted themselves into corners where backing down appears impossible. Trump campaigned on crushing the cartels and cannot appear weak when challenged by what he portrays as a narco-state. Maduro faces an existential threat and has rallied his nation around resistance to American imperialism. Maduro argued that Venezuela is defending not only itself but also the rights of peoples across the region, positioning this as a broader struggle against American hegemony. The economic warfare preceding this military buildup has already devastated both nations' interests. American sanctions have crippled Venezuela's economy, while Maduro's defiance has eliminated billions in potential trade and investment. Now military escalation threatens to destroy whatever economic relationships remain, creating a perfect storm where both sides have more to gain from confrontation than cooperation. The intelligence picture surrounding this crisis reveals preparation for actual combat operations. Maduro said in a speech at a military base in Caracas that Venezuela is always ready for dialogue, but we demand respect and that none of our differences justify a high-impact military conflict. This language suggests Venezuelan intelligence believes American attack preparations are advanced enough to require immediate defensive mobilization. Regional allies are being forced to choose sides in ways that could reshape hemispheric relationships for decades. Colombia faces the nightmare scenario of American forces operating along its border, while Venezuelan troops mass for potential conflict. Brazil's neutral stance becomes impossible if fighting erupts. Cuba and Russia have quietly signaled support for Venezuelan resistance, potentially internationalizing any conflict. The humanitarian implications are staggering. Venezuela's population of 30 million, already devastated by economic collapse, now faces potential warfare against the world's most powerful military. 8 million armed civilians represent both Venezuela's greatest defense asset and a guarantee that any American military intervention would result in catastrophic casualties on all sides. The legal justifications being constructed by both sides reveal preparation for prolonged conflict rather than limited operations. Trump administration officials cite drug trafficking and terrorism as grounds for military action, while Maduro invokes national sovereignty and self-defense rights under international law. Neither framework provides clear escalation limits, suggesting both sides are preparing for maximum rather than minimal conflict. The technological aspects of this confrontation highlight vast asymmetries that favor prolonged rather than decisive warfare. American naval and air superiority could quickly destroy Venezuelan conventional forces, but 8 million armed civilians equipped with small arms and explosives represent a different kind of military challenge entirely. Venezuelan strategy appears designed to make any American victory so costly that it becomes politically unsustainable. International reaction has been muted, but increasingly alarmed as the military buildup continues. European allies privately express concern about American unilateralism, while regional powers worry about spillover effects. China and Russia maintain official neutrality, while quietly providing diplomatic and potentially military support to Venezuelan resistance efforts. The economic warfare component reveals how military conflict has become almost secondary to broader strategic competition. American sanctions aim to cripple Venezuelan state capacity, while Venezuelan defiance undermines American credibility throughout the region. Military escalation serves both sides' political narratives, while moving them steadily toward actual warfare. The most alarming aspect of this crisis is how rapidly it has escalated beyond anyone's ability to control. What began as routine drug interdiction has become preparation for regime change warfare. Both Trump and Maduro face domestic political pressures that reward escalation over compromise, creating momentum toward conflict that may be irreversible. Both nations are now operating in a high-stakes environment where miscalculation could trigger direct confrontations, making the region a potential powder keg. The Caribbean has become a weapons-saturated zone where naval incidents, airspace violations, or border skirmishes could explode into full-scale warfare within hours rather than days. The ultimate question isn't whether Trump and Maduro want war. It's whether they can prevent the military machinery they've set in motion from producing war regardless of their intentions. 8 million armed Venezuelans facing American naval forces in Caribbean waters represents the kind of tinderbox where history turns on split-second decisions made by junior officers rather than strategic calculations by national leaders. What happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether this remains a dangerous standoff or explodes into the Western Hemisphere's first major military conflict of the 21st century. The world is watching, but more importantly, the world is preparing for consequences that could reshape global power balances far beyond the Caribbean's troubled waters.